Good afternoon, everybody. I am here to tell you some very important things about Universal Studios and why I think you need to start visiting now and stop visiting over the summer or over the winter break, things like that. I have a better time for you to visit. Also, we are just like 7 hours away or so from our Disney cruise. I think it goes over at midnight or whatever, so it's gonna be a little bit longer than that, but yeah, we are very, very close to that. Actually, by the time this video comes out, we'll be on the ocean, on the Disney treasure. It's gonna be pretty cool. Either way, I wanna talk a little bit today about why now is a fantastic time to visit the parks, and maybe you should try and rethink your next visit. Obviously, I understand that school, holidays, things like that all kind of play into when you can actually visit, but I think right now is one of the best times, if not the best time, to visit Universal Studios. Can I just point out also that we have new music here, by the way? I'm just gonna let it play for you guys as you guys get to hear some of the new music that they have introduced as you are walking in to Universal Studios. I don't know the last time they did this, I'm sure, not too long ago, but we have new music walking in. I don't think I realized how long the songs are, so I'll have to try and get them on the way out. There's a few things I want to be doing inside of the park. But yeah, I know that they have Jurassic Park up there, Jaws. I think I heard Casper and other things. So it's just kind of interesting to see that they have updated the music. I remember hearing different things like Beetlejuice and a few other things from the last one, and I don't think they kept any of them. I think this is a full new docket of songs here, so it's kind of fun. Coming into the park, by the way, it looks like the on-location gift shop up here is under construction. Construction walls all the way down, and they wrap all the way around this way. Take a look at this. Right through there, all the way up to the Today Cafe. Pretty crazy. Excited to see what comes of this. I think they made an announcement. I think it's getting a full retheme. I don't think it's just an update to the location itself. I think it's going to turn into something new. I think. I'm not positive, but I think. Now, before we totally dig in, the way I kind of addressed this was I was what are the top 3 things people care about when they come to the parks, whether it's Universal, Disney, Busch, etc., or just in general Orlando? What are the top 3 things that make the biggest difference in your vacation? And this is what I came up with, and please let me know in the comments below, what would you assume are the top 3 things that you think people care about when they vacation? So I would say first up would be price. How much are you going to pay for your trip? Top to bottom, all in cost, because a lot of times you're well, we're gonna spend this amount. It ends up being a little bit more or whatever. You budget so much, but then you spend more at the parks and whatever. But again, the price, number 1. Number 2 would be the weather. And number 3 would be the crowds. Those would be the top 3 things, in my opinion, that people care about when they visit the parks. The weather, I know some people could feel hit or miss, right? Because it's Florida, so you're kind of always expecting it to be hot, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So these are kind of addressing those, if that makes sense. So again, let me know in the comments, what do you guys feel are the top 3 most important things people look at and kind of consider when they are taking trips to the park? Now, I am going to save the price for last because that gets a little bit more technical, but we will dig into the price. But first and foremost, let's just start with some of the crowds and what you can expect visiting this time of the year. Now, one of the easiest ways to be able to tell would just be, first and foremost, let's look at the wait times. It's not always indicative of the crowd levels, but it's a pretty good idea. So let's see here. Roller coaster, 35 minutes. Minion Blast 5, Gringotts 50. If you want to do the Ollivanders experience, 10 minutes. Minion Mayhem, 40 minutes. E.T., 35. Well, that one went fast. But Fast and Furious is 15. Rip Ride, 20. Twirl and Hurl, 15. Jimmy Fallon, 25. Revenge of the Mummy, 45. Simpsons, 40. Transformers, 35. And let's see if we can cycle. That's probably going to be it for this side, actually. We're not over at Island, so we're not going to see all the Islands rides. But however, not a single ride over 60 minutes right now. And just so you know, it is about 4:30, 5 o'clock or so. And these are the crowds that you see existing out on the streets right now. This is nothing. I'm not seeing very many long lines right now. Obviously, the park is only open for about 2.5 hours more, but this is still a very popular time to show up to the parks. But just take a look, right? These are the people walking around where just a few weeks ago, it was the busiest I've seen it since moving down to Orlando. Wow, that was loud. Before we keep talking about the crowds, I want to point out we have a giant stage here right now. One thing to keep in mind is right here at the end of January, we do typically have Rock the Universe. I think it is kind of always around the same time frame here. And you can see we have one of the stages. So if you are coming on one of those nights, you do have to keep in mind hours, things like that. The crowds could increase just a little bit because people will be here for the event. But yes, we have a giant stage here getting ready for a rock concert. But another thing to keep in mind that it's not always just the wait times. As we are looking over the lagoon here, something you also have to keep in mind is the nighttime show. Any entertainment means you typically have better viewing and better options to find better spots for viewing. So that area will get super packed for Sensational. However, if you are here with way less crowds, that isn't going to be getting packed nearly as fast. It will still fill up because that's kind of the prime viewing area. A lot of people actually do like to go over there kind of in front of Fast and Furious as well. But you will have a much better chance of getting a good viewing spot over there, wherever you want to go, because the crowds aren't existing like they normally do. You don't have millions of people trying to crowd in at the same time, but way less. So that is another thing to keep in mind. It's not just about the wait times. Same thing with food. As we look just across the way, you have Richter's over there, Lombard's, etc. A lot of the restaurants have a lot more availability, which means you don't have to wait as long. You can actually get reservations. Now, that's not to say that they're perfect by any means. It doesn't mean you're gonna have no wait times for food. It doesn't mean you're gonna have the best viewing spot. You still typically do ultimately need to spend some time, carving out space and giving yourself ample amount of time and kind of just planning things a little bit more accordingly. But when you aren't here in the busiest time of the year, that planning process becomes much more simplified. Now, along with those crowds, another thing to kind of keep in mind is I do tend to see over winter break more than summer break, but over winter break in particular, I see a lot more rowdy crowds, a little bit more rude, and a little bit more inconsiderate, unfortunately. And that isn't pertaining to any specific park, any specific time frame. It's not like the week right after Christmas, right before Christmas. Just in general, I do tend to see a little bit more aggression in the park, unfortunately, across the board again, when we are in the winter months. Like I said, summer, it's not too bad, but I almost never see or experience anything like that in these kinds of months when it is kind of the off season, if you will. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. If you are experiencing anything like that, this would be the perfect time to kind of avoid some of those issues that you might be encountering. Now, this isn't one of my top 3 options here, but this is kind of like that asterisk number 4 almost, and that would be the activities. As you can see right here, this is going to be a food booth here for Mardi Gras, an experience that I feel like not a lot of people experience inside of the parks. They tend to not go to this event. They don't make a full thing out of it. Not many people really celebrate Mardi Gras all that much. You might go to your local grocery store or whatever, pick up some beignets or whatever you might pick up. But right here, there is a food booth, which means we are getting a food booth here for Mardi Gras, and that is a very fun event here at Universal that a lot of people don't really experience year to year because it's only about 2 months long. It is actually starting here in about a week or so. It starts, I believe, February 1st, so we are just a few days away from starting the whole shebang here of Mardi Gras. It is a blast, by the way. I think it is one of the most underrated just festival kind of celebrations here in Orlando in general. I think it is a lot of fun. If you guys have never experienced it, it's something you have to experience. But again, it goes February 1st, I think, to the end of March. You only get about 2 months of it. Great food, you have the parade. It's just a different vibe for it. But again, that time frame isn't a typical time frame for people to be visiting, and I do think it is a great opportunity to do so. Obviously, if you're here in January, you're not really going to be experiencing it because it isn't happening yet, but right around this kind of late January, early February is a great time. And a lot of people talk about that online. This is no secret by any means. I'm not saying oh, this is some unheard secret news. People talk about this all the time. I'm just trying to reiterate how nice it is to be inside of the parks. There's not a lot of people walking around right now. I feel like I almost have to whisper because it's not just there's no commotion. So I'm just so you know, because it's I feel like I'm talking too loud to a camera because there's just not anybody really around right now. There are crowds, but it is nothing like any other time of the year where you're most likely going to visit, which again would be summer, and it would be over winter break. And I know sometimes like spring break, things like that as well. But I'm just letting you know this is a fantastic time to visit when we're talking crowd levels. Now, let's head around the corner. I'm sure you guys can see my jacket. We'll talk a little bit about it, but again, let's walk through over here and probably go grab a seat maybe. No way! I wanted to come over here to the Imagination Cafe and pick something up. That ruins everything. Oh no. Well, okay. Divert. New plan, gotta find somewhere else to grab food. Let's go this way. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to get for food. I don't know. All right, I'm just gonna keep on moving. But one thing I want to point out, as we are walking around, you can see we have people in coats, some people in long sleeves, some people in shorts, t-shirts. I've seen tank tops. I've seen a little bit of everything, and that leads me to my next point about the weather. That is one thing I want to talk about, and you can really wear just about whatever when it comes to the weather. It kind of rhymes, weather, whatever. My point being, the weather here is a little unpredictable in January. I will kind of mention that, but it is kind of the perfect situation because most days you can have 70s, sometimes 80s. In January, I don't see too many days at 80s, but a lot of 70s. But in the evenings, it drops to about 50s or 60s. So you can just dress a little bit more comfortable if you like to bundle up a little bit, or if you want to be wearing shorts and short sleeve. You get that during the day, and then you can wear a hoodie and like sweatpants in the evening or whatever you want. It is not hot. It is not humid. It is like the perfect temperature for just a few months here, where it is like the ideal climate to be walking around a theme park. Because as you kind of walk around, you'll start to heat up. You know, you're exercising really when you're walking thousands of steps a day. But right now, it is amazing because even if you are exercising and heating up a little bit, it's not bad because the weather is fantastic. Like I said, you feel like there's no humidity right now. The air is perfect. You get a little breeze, and it's like 50s and 60s and 70s almost every single day. There are a few days where it is 40s and it is cold, and I think 50s and sometimes even 60s can be pretty chilly. But overall, I would say the weather is perfect. It's on point, and realistically, most people that visit are coming from colder climates anyway. So the climate here is significantly better, and ultimately, you just get a warmer experience. And again, warm experience as 60s compared to 20s or something, but again, it's perfect. I guess piggybacking off of the weather is the sunshine. Being back in Illinois for the holidays, I never saw the sun. I saw like an illuminated sky, kind of, but it was always so dreary. Down here, the sky is like this. Do you see? Blue skies with some clouds sometimes, but it's like white clouds, and you get to see the sun. It's obviously setting right now, so we can't see it behind the buildings over there, but you get to see the sun. So that seasonal depression maybe you have is alleviated for just a little bit being down here in these months. But yeah, we get blue skies even in January. I want to go point something out. If my theory is correct, we're about to prove it, or I'm going to look kind of silly. But if I'm not mistaken, we are selling a lot of long sleeve based items around the parks for this time of the year, just to solidify even more that you have the option to wear long sleeves. It just gives you more choices, you know, when you are deciding what you ultimately want to have in your wardrobe when you come down here. You can have long sleeves, short sleeves, again, tank tops, swim trunks, whatever you're feeling, but I'm gonna go check one store here to go see if my theory checks out. If any of you have worked at like a fair or anywhere, anything like that, do you know, are those rims formed differently? I heard once upon a time that like they're shaped like more like oval instead of circle, and it like makes it harder to go in. Or is that fake, or is that at some places? Also, this guy is almost draining them from downtown. Now, I'm sure that they adjust things pretty aggressively depending on how cold it gets, but I've seen where like they have like gloves and like jackets right up front, so might not be bad because the weather hasn't been too bad right now. We've been in like the upper 50s, low 60s instead of like the low 50s or 40s that we did have for about a week there. But let's go see. I can already see right up front we do have a hoodie. So you come in, take an immediate left, and you have an entire wall of all winter wear, right? So we have scarves, gloves, hats and beanies, kind of these like ear wraps, lots of hoodies, sweatpants, fleeces, more sweatpants, more fleeces and hoodies. So my theory is correct. This is not out during the summer, by the way. So it goes to show you it's definitely a timing thing that when you come to the park, depending on when, they will have this stuff up and available. So I think you could still buy it. It's kind of just like deeper in some like the main stores, but this is the store over here for Men in Black when you come out. So this is crazy that this is on display over here. Normally this would not be up on display right here. So just so you know, we have winter wear here in January. Now, any of you that visit during winter already, that's no shock to you. But again, I just wanted to point out that that is like front and center or side and center kind of. But my point is there's a lot of it and it's on display because that is how weather shifts here. Now, I will stop talking about weather and let's talk a little bit more about the final thing, and that's pricing. And pricing can always fluctuate. It is a crapshoot when it comes to pricing because there are discounts that are available so often throughout the year. Hotels, it depends on where you want to stay. So you can make things as expensive or as affordable as you want them to be. But let's sit down and really break down the numbers here when it comes to the actual price that you would pay. Let's say maybe the start of February. Let's use that as our time frame versus either summer or winter. Let's go find a spot quick. As we are making our way over there, I just want to point out 15 minutes for Men in Black, by the way. One thing I should point out also now as we are traversing around the park, more construction walls. Sometimes this time of the year can bring out more construction because it is a less visited time of the year. So they opt to do some of the construction during this time because again, it's not going to be interrupting quite as heavy as the busy season. But this is pretty far back. I'm curious to what they're doing. Could be stuff getting set up for Mardi Gras. Maybe they're doing some food booths. But most of the time they don't cover all of that. That would just be exposed and you could see the booths going up, kind of like the one we saw over there near Battery Park. So I am curious to see what kind of construction is happening right here. This may be a little unhinged of a question, but I need to know. It's totally unrelated. This has nothing to do with the video at all, but I was just walking by like movie posters and I was like, wow, I would love to watch some of these older films that I haven't seen. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to like know everything about them, like as if you have watched them, but didn't necessarily watch them. Let me explain just a little bit. Okay, this is, oh my gosh, this is gonna be crazy how weird this gets. But so like, it's like, oh, well, I want to know the movie and I wish like I had all like the memories of the movie, but I never saw the movie. Well, if the movie's 2 hours and there's 10 movies I don't watch, like that's 20 hours. That's a lot of time to watch all those movies. And I'm like, wow, like it'd be cool to just be like, oh, I just know everything about the movie. Do you think, stay with me here, do you think technology will ever advance enough that we'll be able to just like want to know everything about something and you can just like download it to your brain? Like, do you know what I'm saying? So I could just be like, oh, I want to like know everything about like one of the posters was Seabiscuit, for example. So it's like, I want to know everything about Seabiscuit. I want to basically have the brain that watched Seabiscuit. So I didn't like watch it, but it would have been as if I did. So I would just be like, boop, download the brain. And now like I know Seabiscuit, or like it's as if I had watched it, but I didn't spend 2 hours watching it or whatever. Does that make sense? I know that's crazy and it's like, it's that's wild. But I was just like thinking, or it's like, you know, you want to know all the information about something. Could you just like download it to your brain? You think we'll ever get there? Or like, is that like a 2500 thing? Like, 'cause we're in 2020, like in 500 years, could that be a thing? Maybe, I don't know. That was wild. Sometimes you just have like these thoughts, you know, and you're like, that's crazy. What if you could do that thing? But like, technology's not that far off from doing crazy things, but maybe that's pretty far out there. I don't know. That's wild. Okay, back to the normally scheduled video here. That was awesome. Another experience, a little off topic, but not totally. I'm walking, there's a family in front of me, and family of like 4 or 5, and the dad's carrying one of the kids on the shoulders, mom's pushing a stroller, and she walks by where I'm right next to Fast and Furious, the exit right here, and she goes, "Oh, we didn't do Fast and Furious," and the dad goes, "Oh," and he's like, "Okay, let's go do Fast and Furious." But that response is like, that perfectly encapsulates Fast and Furious. It's like, if you're coming, you do Fast and Furious, but that reaction was like perfect. I wish I could have caught it on camera. It was fantastic, but also it's a stranger, so I would never do that. But it was hilarious. It's like, yeah, that is Fast and Furious. It's like, you have to ride Fast and Furious, but do you want to ride Fast and Furious? You know? Sometimes. But yeah, either way, that was kind of funny. Either way, now we're getting back to the normal video here. Also, for those of you that don't like to get sick, and typically right after the holidays, everybody is getting sick. I feel like every single person I knew after the holidays was sick. Less crowds means typically less sick people around the park, and also not so crammed, which means that you are free to kind of move about and not as many people coughing and sneezing on you. So your chance of getting sick are at least less. I'm not going to say zero, because definitely can still happen, but it is a lot less than if you are visiting over a busy time of the year. All right, I think I found the perfect spot here. I'm going to grab a little tripod. Also found a way that I can mount the tripod, so it should be a little easier when I am doing solo videos. Nicole is getting ready. She has a lot of stuff to kind of prep. So do I, to be honest with you, before our cruise tomorrow morning. But yeah, either way, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the pricing. That was the final, well, I guess that was probably the first thing I said, but the final thing we're going to talk about, and why I still believe that this is probably the best time to visit Universal Studios. Now, I might be looking off camera a little bit because I have prices pulled up here. All right, so we went ahead and chose Monday, February 3rd to Friday, February 7th. That you can see there. That is our timeline here. So if we look at that right now, Cabana Bay, first rooms starting at $219. That's pretty dang affordable for a hotel stay. So we are looking at $219 a night. So now let's go ahead and adjust those parameters. Let's choose when people typically would come. I would say June, July is a very common time, and even the winter months, but I am choosing kind of like the first full week of a Monday to Friday. So let's choose July 7th through 10th. Let's get you those numbers. Now, as you can see, we've changed our time frame, and we are up about $30-ish a night. So that does add up, especially if you are going, this is Cabana Bay again, by the way, but you're looking at an extra about $30, because what was it, about $219, and now we're looking at $248. So I would say, you know, obviously $30 a night for 5 nights, that's $150 extra. Let's go ahead and look at the most popular time of December. So we'll do the first week there in December. However, I will say that first week of December is pretty cheap. So I would say probably we're gonna have to look a little bit later, to be honest with you. Yeah, and that's gonna be quite cheap overall, $192. That's even cheaper than what we were seeing right now. But let's go ahead and change those dates. Now, those are the dates for the last week of January. It's almost $100 extra a night for Cabana Bay. We're looking at $315 versus $219 for basically like the first week of February. So you can see $100 difference. That's a lot when you're talking $200 versus $300. That's a night. So things to kind of keep in mind, pricing wise. Obviously now the start of December is another great time, just because crowds are pretty low then as well. I will tell you though, December sometimes can still actually be warm. This year we had a relatively cooler winter starting in like kind of early November. But I will say, like, January is when you get like the cooler days for sure. Like, we have a lot of 50-degree days right now. So early December, it still could potentially be a little bit warmer, where you're not going to be wearing long sleeves and things like that as much. It could still be a little humid, not oftentimes, but I will just kind of like say that sometimes it's not the same. But overall, like I said, you could see the difference in pricing, and that is just on the hotel stay alone. You know, as I'm looking all of this up, I just realized I never got my food. I'm sitting right here next to Louis, and I'm like, do I go get a piece of pizza right now? And then I'm thinking to myself, there's no way, because I'm about to be on a cruise and be eating like 24/7 and probably gain 8 to 10 pounds. So I am gonna bypass the Louis right now. I was gonna get like a soft pretzel or something. I wanted to get like the slice of pizza from DreamWorks, the Imagination Cafe over there, but it's not much better than Louis, right? So I guess now I'm just being a hypocrite, but that's okay. I mean, is this not perfect? You get a little bit of like the sunset reflection out there. You just enjoy this light breeze. You get some music. Crowds are just kind of hanging out, walking by. I mean, this is it. This is the life that you look for if you're just trying to casually hang out at the park. And not everybody is. Some people are looking to just hit the rides non-stop. But this, to me, is the perfect vibe when you are in the parks. Thanks for keeping it pretty casual with me here, by the way. You know, we're just kind of hanging out, talking about why this is such a great time to visit the parks. And again, that was kind of the vibe of the entire video, really. I was just hoping to kind of encapsulate how just great the environment is right now, that you can just stroll, relax, sit, hang out. And if I wanted to, ultimately ride some rides. Unfortunately, I can't bring you guys along on the rides with me here at Universal. Maybe one day they'll allow filming policy. I understand why most of their rides don't have it on there, but yeah, I can't really take you along for those fun adventures when we are actually riding the rides. But like I said, I do think the vibe is just different. One thing I'm very curious about would be for next year with Epic Universe opening, what do the crowds look like in the same time frame? Do we have more crowds because like people are visiting Epic? Do we have less because Epic's taking so many of the crowds? I will be quite curious to see what ends up happening, and you know we are going to cover that on the channel. Obviously, taking a look at the Epic crowds, taking a look at the crowds here at, you know, studios and at islands within that first year. I mean, that's going to be a big kind of, I don't know, unknown. I mean, we have no data to that. We don't have any clue how that's ultimately going to affect the crowd levels. And, you know, we're going to be figuring that out. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if that is something you are interested in kind of learning. Obviously, we'll be covering Epic Universe and everything like that, but just kind of understanding, you know, when might be kind of the better times to visit. Things will change, obviously, as the years go on and Epic becomes less of the brand new thing, but I think it's going to be quite a while before it kind of loses any sort of steam, to be honest. But I will be curious to see what ends up happening with those crowd levels. I will never get over watching people's reactions and their faces when they look at Rip Ride Rocket right there in front of it, and they're just staring and they're like, oh, everybody is so just like amused by it. And it's kind of sad that it's going to leave, and we talked a little bit about it. You know, I am ready for a change in that ride. I do think we need something different there. It just rattled me up too much. I would love if it was smoother, but I don't know if it's worth that investment for them to basically have to redo so much of the ride to make it smooth versus just ultimately put something new there and kind of freshen it up. But again, it's such an iconic piece when you're pulling in here to Universal Studios Florida here. And yeah, I just love it. But either way, hopefully you guys had fun casually hanging out with me here today, talking about why I truly believe this is the best time to visit. And hopefully you guys start to explore different options. And maybe you are only able to visit during the summer or the winter holiday break, and that is okay. I think just coming to the park, having a good time is always the best thing to do, and that is most important for you and your situation. But if you ever do have the opportunity to show up in a situation like this where maybe you can come when the crowds aren't so crazy and the weather is just perfect, it's definitely worth it. I definitely think you guys would have such a good time. But yeah, we need to now go get ready for this cruise, get packed up. I have quite a bit of packing to do for a 7-day cruise. I'm a little bit behind, but hopefully we'll be okay. Either way, I really appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for being here.